Now, if you watch my channel, you know last year I reviewed the Acer Swift X, one of my favorite 14-inch laptops of 2021, and for good reason. It had a 14-inch beautiful display. It also had the Ryzen processor paired with the NVIDIA RTX 3050 Ti GPU, all in a very portable, sleek package. Well, the follow-up just arrived into the studio, and there are some changes here, ladies and gentlemen. The new Swift X here for 2022 now sports the Intel processor, a step up in that department. We'll talk about that in a moment. It's still paired with that RTX 3050 Ti to give you some extra graphics horsepower, and it is very capable. And you now have a new color with some new ports on it. We got Thunderbolt ports on it and a whole host of other features. We're gonna get into it right now. Hey everybody, it's Andrew, and this is my unboxing and first look review at the brand new Acer Swift X here for 2022. Coming up. Now, before we get to the unboxing, I want to let everybody know, in the interest of transparency and full disclosure, I'm not being paid by Acer, I'm not being sponsored by Acer. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own. Acer is not getting copy approval. That means they're seeing this video for the first time, just like you. Now, this unit was provided by Acer, and once this review is done, I'll be sending it back. Now, pricing starts at $1,229.99, and the price as tested here today with my review unit, $1,299.99. Now, that is an increase of last year from what they were offering with the AMD model, but I think with the improvements in terms of the performance, the upgraded display, and the overall improvements in a lot of features, I think it's worth it. For those interested, I'll leave a link in the description below for more information, and we can buy one. And before we unbox this, let's see what's new this time around. There's a lot of changes. It now has a Core i7 1260p, a 28-watt CPU with 12 cores, 8 efficiency cores, and 4 performance cores. That's up over the Ryzen 7 5800U from AMD in the 2021 model. And now sports faster LPDDR5 RAM. It now has a 14-inch 2.2K display with a 16:10 aspect ratio, an improvement over last year, which only had a 1080p display and a 16:9 aspect ratio. Big improvement in that department. It now has Wi-Fi 6E over Wi-Fi 6. It now has a 1080p webcam, an improvement over last year, which sported a 720p webcam. You now have 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports, while last year you didn't have any since it was running an AMD processor. You now have dual copper heat pipes, a powerful fan technology, and air inlet keyboard to help improve with the thermals. And it now has 2 new colorways, Alga Green and Tiger Lily Red, here for 2022. And with the specs and pricing out of the way, let's find out what you get inside the box. Let's open it up. You get a 100-watt USB-C power adapter, pretty compact for a 100-watt power adapter, that's for sure, and they give you the extension cord as well. And you get some documentation, and of course you get the unit itself. And holding the unit for the first time, the first thing that comes to mind, this feels very premium, and I like this new Alga Green colorway on the top with a dark gray bottom, a nice two-tone colorway here. It looks really good. Now this comes in at 3.09 pounds or 1.39 kilograms, and considering this is a 14-inch laptop with a discrete GPU, easy to take with you on the go, throw it in your bag, you have a pretty powerful laptop on the go. You gotta love it. Now, I see very little flex in the chassis, which is good, very little bend, very little give, which means that the rock-solid build quality is there that we'd like to see. Okay, let's check out the port selection. There's some big changes here when it comes to the 2 USB-C ports, because they're now USB-C 4 Thunderbolt 4 technology here with full functionality. They support data, charge, and display out. That's a big improvement over last year, which had no Thunderbolt support. Next to that is an HDMI 2.1 port, and next to that is a USB-A 3.2 Gen 1 port to round out the ports on the left side. And moving over to the right side is a 3.5mm microphone headphone combo jack and a USB-A 3.2 Gen 1 port, and finally a Kensington lock port to round out the ports on this laptop. Notably missing, there's no SD card reader of any sort on this laptop. But I would say all in all, a good port selection, and considering we now have Thunderbolt 4 ports, a big improvement over last year in terms of connectivity. Now, to get inside this laptop, there are 10 T5 Torx screws. Remove them, pop off the bottom plate with either a pry tool or guitar pick. Be careful, you don't want to clip any of the edges. You don't want to break any of the tabs. But once you do that, it's easy. You're in, and now you can see what's inside. Now, once inside, you'll notice that there are a few things we can upgrade. But one thing you cannot upgrade on this, that would be the RAM. That's soldered into the motherboard. That means you as the user cannot upgrade it yourself. Now, this can be configured with up to 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5 RAM running in dual channel mode. Now, I would have liked an option for 32 gigabytes of RAM, but that's not what we get. 16 is the maximum. And it's also the faster LPDDR5 RAM. Last year's was slower, so this is a nice improvement here in 2022. Now, when it comes to the SSD, the good news is there are 2 slots for you to upgrade here. Now, the review unit that was sent over by Acer has 1 terabyte PCIe Gen 3 SSD storage. And as you can see from these reads and writes, these are good speeds, although they're not the faster Gen 4 speeds we've been seeing here in 2022. Now, as far as the Wi-Fi, as I mentioned earlier, this now is Wi-Fi 6E along with Bluetooth 5.2. Now, that combo card is slotted in as well, so if you need to change it out down the road, you have that option. Now, speaking of the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, both are working well. No issues with either connections or reception, both working as advertised. All right, let's talk about the display, and we have a big improvement here over last year. That's because this is a 14-inch display with a higher resolution than you got last year. This is a 2.2K IPS display, a resolution of 2240 by 1400. And yes, that is much better than the 1080p, the 1920 by 1080 we saw last year. And this 16:10 aspect ratio is a big improvement over the 16:9 that you got in the 2021 model. It has 300 nits of brightness, and that's actually what I measured, so it's pretty accurate in terms of their claim. And it also has what they call the Comfy View LED backlit TFT LCD. In other words, it's a pretty nice display with very good viewing angles and very little glare or reflection because it is a matte display, which I'm a big fan of. Now, you get a really deep blacks with a 0.23 black level score, good white point, good contrast, and it has a pretty low delta E score of 1.36, meaning this is a color accurate display. Remember, anything below 2 is a color accurate display, so it doesn't disappoint. And it has good coverage of the color gamut. We're looking at 100% sRGB, 79% Adobe RGB, 73% of the DCI P3 wide color gamut, and 73% NTSC. So it's a pretty good choice if you are a content creator that's going to do Lightroom, video editing, color grading, and of course Photoshop, things like that. This is actually pretty decent. Not the best I've ever seen, but certainly usable, that's for sure. Now, as I mentioned, this is a matte display, but you will notice a little bit of glare in direct sunlight, but very, very little, very readable display outdoors. So that's going to be pretty good. Now, as far as the fact that this is a 16:10 aspect ratio means you're going to do less scrolling when it comes to web browsing. You'll see more on the display. Now, the border around the display is plastic, but everything else on this laptop seems to be metal. So that's been pretty good in terms of the build. So something to be aware of. And there's no doubt about it, this is a much better display than last year, a big improvement over the 2021 model. So this is the front-facing camera on the brand new Acer Swift X here for 2022. They've moved to an Intel processor, 12th gen, the Core i7 1260p, 12 cores we know. We'll talk about that in a moment. But this is a 1080p webcam, so an upgrade in that department. What do you think about the video quality? What do you think about the audio quality of the internal mics? Now, this is not an IR camera, so you cannot log in with Windows Hello with this camera, but the power button doubles as a fingerprint scanner, allowing you to log in with Windows Hello. It worked well, and the setup was very easy. So I'm curious to know what you think. Let me know in the comment section below. Is this good for your Zoom calls? Is this good for your work from home needs? Let me know in the comment section below. And I think there's no question the 2022 model has an improved webcam. As you can see, a much sharper, much cleaner look than the one you got from last year, which was only 720p. So a big improvement as far as the web conferencing is concerned here with doing Zoom calls, work from home needs. This is a definite improvement over the 2021 model. And for those wondering, well, you can't quite open it up with one finger. The hinge is a little too stiff on this, but not a big deal. And once you do open it up, one of my favorite parts of this laptop is revealed to you, and that would be the keyboard. I like the key travel. The tactility is excellent. and it really feels comfortable to type on with extended periods of time. So far, it's looking out really good on that. And it has a really nice strong backlight. White against these dark keys makes it easy to differentiate the keys when you're trying to get work done in a dark room or a dimly lit environment. It worked really well. And it has a really nice touchpad. They're calling it the Ocean Glass Touchpad by Acer. It's their trademark, and had a pretty good tactility in terms of the feedback when you click on it. And it had two-finger scrolling that was buttery smooth. All the gestures worked well, very fluid. It worked as advertised. So looking good so far on that touchpad. All right, let's talk about performance. Now, I've only had this for a couple of days, so I still need to do my full testing in my full review, so stay tuned for that. But I was able to run some initial benchmarks, and I've been able to put it into perspective as to where this stands. And you're seeing an improvement when it comes to multi-core performance over last year's model, which ran the AMD Ryzen 7 5800U. That had 7524. We're scoring here this time around 9003. So that's a nice improvement there. We're also seeing a better single-core performance here in 2022 as well, scoring 1654 versus the 1432 from that AMD model from 2021. So far looking like a nice improvement here in 2022. Now, I'm curious to see what this would have done had they gone with the 6000 series from AMD Ryzen series. That would have been interesting. Maybe we will see that once supply issues are resolved. Now, I was able to run the Cinebench R23, which shows a more sustained workload, seeing if this will throttle down, and got really good scores, not over 9,000 when it comes to the multi-core score of that test. I'll do more testing, of course. And the graphics are the same as last year. This is the RTX 3050 Ti, 4 gigabytes of GDDR6 video RAM, and we're seeing an improvement there as well. I'm seeing better scores on both the Time Spy and Firestrike scores here in 2022. We'll talk more about that very soon. I'll also bring you some gaming benchmarks as well as the thermal performance of the supposedly improved thermal solution here employed by Acer. So we'll have more of that very soon. Now, one area I'm not seeing improvement is in battery life, and we saw a much better battery life last year, getting over 14 hours on that AMD model with the same 59 watt-hour battery. This time around, I got a little bit over 9 hours on my continuous web surfing test over Wi-Fi at 150 nits. Under real-world mixed usage, you can expect anywhere from 6 to 7 hours, depending on what you're doing. But that's my initial battery test. Of course, I'll do a more long-term sustained battery test in my upcoming full review. But so far, I'm seeing a hit on battery. Not as efficient as that AMD processor. Of course, that was a very efficient processor with that Ryzen 7 5800U. There's no doubt about it. All right, let's talk about the audio. And there are two bottom-facing speakers towards the front of the laptop, and I thought they sounded pretty good, although I thought it could use a little bit more bass, but I think the volume was good, the mids were good. Decent sound so far. Of course, I'll do more testing in the upcoming full review, but so far, sounding pretty good. Now, to give you an example of the sound, let's listen to Epidemic Sound, and if you want 10% off of Epidemic Sound, check out the link in the description below. But let's hear that example of how this laptop sounds. Okay, let's bring it all home. What do I think about the Acer Swift X here for 2022? And I gotta say, improvements pretty much across the board over the 2021 model. I like the improved display, going with a 2.2K display and a 16:10 aspect ratio over the 16:9 aspect ratio and the 1080p display from last year. Nice improvement there. I like the upgradable SSD. You get 2 slots for upgradability, which I like. Upgradable Wi-Fi is good. Of course, the RAM is soldered in just like it was last year. Wi-Fi 6E over the Wi-Fi 6 from last year, nice improvement there. Improved webcam, 1080p over 720p from last year, definite improvement there. Faster RAM, improved thermal solution. We'll talk more about that in the upcoming full review. New colorways here. I like this green, and there's also a red color that looks pretty nice as well. Good port selection here, with the exception of no SD card reader, and there is no higher refresh rate option. That would have been nice. Battery life, not as good this time around. around, which means it's not as efficient as that AMD Ryzen 5800U from last year. And it now has a higher starting price of $1,229. That's up from the $999 from last year, but I think they're justified with all these improvements in the 2022 model. So there's a lot to like here, ladies and gentlemen. I look forward to putting it through its paces to see if this Swift X here for 2022 is definitely worth your money. And so far, it's looking like a really good choice. We'll talk more about this very soon. So what do you think about this bad boy, the Swift X here for 2022? Beautiful, like winter green color here. I guess that's what they call it. I don't even know what they call it, actually. Dark gray on the back, nice two-tone color, really nice looking device, of course. The new additions here, of course, are these two Thunderbolt 4 ports, very versatile, allowing you to connect to multiple 4K monitors, external GPUs, something we really couldn't do easily last year. We got really good battery life out of this. We'll talk about that in the full review, but my initial battery test so far is looking good with this, as I showed you with the numbers. The performance is very good, especially the multi-core performance, which is a step up from last year as well. Single core also saw some improvement as well. So you can game on this with that RTX 3050 Ti. We'll get into that and more, especially the thermal performance, the surface temperatures, the fan noise. We'll get into it very soon because I just received it. Now, of course, with this new processor, with this new design, and with this 16:10 aspect ratio that they're now going with, you also get a higher starting price. But the unit I'm going with here today comes in at $1,299, and it actually is a pretty decent price considering all these upgraded features you get this time around. But I'm curious to know what you think. Let me know in the comment section below. So please hit the like button, please subscribe, please share this video. Don't forget to leave a comment in that comment section below. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me know if there's a device or something out there you think I should review. I'll do my best to try to make that happen. Don't forget to check me out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, my website, amdtechreviews.com. So until next time, this is Andrew from AMD Tech. See ya.